Yay Networks.
I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. We're talking about sports drinks in this week's episode, but I want you to think beyond sports drinks, beyond exercise, and also beyond the summertime heat, because staying well hydrated is always essential, and sports drinks are not always essential, even if you're exercising on a regular basis, or I should say traditional sports drinks are not always essential. So we're going to go through the rundown on my top picks. What brands do I really love for sports drinks? And in what situations? There's some that have more carbs, more sugars, but they're still all natural. But those are going to be better in certain situations. There's others that are very low carb, very low sugar, and those are going to be preferred in other situations. The electrolytes vary as well. So I'll be talking a lot about different brands, which ones I really like and why. And before we do, though, let's get into a little bit about when do we need to even think about a sports drink. And before we get too far into sports drinks specifically, though, if you're really interested in muscle cramping and all of the science that goes behind it, I did a really cool interview with Dr. Bob Murray. He is an expert in sports drinks, electrolytes, hydration, and he joined me a while back to talk about all things muscle cramping, the science of muscle cramping. So I'm going to link to that in our episode notes. He and I talk about what it is, why we cramp, facts and myths about muscle cramping, and we cover sports drinks and electrolytes, not so much the specific brands that I'll be talking about today, but we talk more about the types of ingredients and why these ingredients are in there, and then also different home remedies and some really cool insight by Dr. Murray about muscle cramping in a way that you've probably never thought about it before. So if you want to go deeper into the topic of muscle cramping, check out my past podcast, The Science of Muscle Cramping, expert interview with Dr. Bob Murray. Again, I'll link to it in the show notes of this episode. So when we're talking about sports drinks, before we get too far down into brands, let's talk about when do we need a sports drink? So again, like we said earlier, the first thing that comes to mind is when you're exercising. And yes, that's typically going to be the case. It's essential to replenish electrolytes, especially when we're losing large amounts of sweat. So as summer is coming upon us, we are feeling the heat more. We're seeing the sweat. We see it on our skin, our clothes, our hair. Keep in mind, though, that even when the weather is cooler, it's drier, we're still sweating. We can still be losing large amounts of sweat. It just evaporates more quickly. So a key or kind of a sign that we might be losing sweat, that we're not really feeling the dampness of that sweat, is that gritty skin, seeing the white granular dust that can dry on our clothes, especially dark clothes, feeling it on your face, feeling it on your arms, kind of that grittiness. That's salt. The other thing to keep in mind is some people are really salty sweaters, others aren't. If you're cramping a lot and you're just drinking water and you're or you're not drinking some of the higher electrolyte sports drinks we'll be talking about, especially if you're one of those that feels that grit on your skin, you see it drying on your clothes, you're probably a salty sweater. And so as we're talking about the sports drinks in a minute that are higher in electrolytes and higher in sodium, listen up, because those might be the better fit for you. So when we're looking at sports drinks, yes, during exercise, or it could be during work outside in the heat, anytime we're losing that large amount of sweat, we want to replenish those electrolytes. Well, what are electrolytes? Sodium is the main electrolyte lost in our sweat. There's also trace amounts of things like calcium, magnesium, potassium. So these are definitely beneficial. They can be beneficial if they're in a sports drink, but sodium is really that main electrolyte that we lose in sweat. And for that reason, it's also the main electrolyte of importance when we're looking at the different sports drinks. Now, talking about sports drinks, when we talk about traditional everyday sports drinks, and I'll just say them by name, Powerade, Gatorade, most of these sugar-containing sports drinks, most of us only need them when we're exercising longer than an hour, hour and a half steady state. So if you are training for a marathon, you're doing a triathlon, you're doing these really long extended endurance training sessions, okay, it's at that point that we can typically benefit from a sports drink that has sugar in it. But if you're doing a 45-minute cycle class, if you're doing an outdoor boot camp class, or if you're just going for a brisk walk outside, most of us at that point, we don't need these sugary sports drinks. And so we're really just dumping sugar in when we might be actually trying to lose extra body fat, shed some of those pounds, whatever your goal might be. If it's that physical goal of leaning out and we're doing that shorter workout session, most of us, and well, I don't want to say always, but most of us, if it's not going to be that hour, hour and a half or longer, and especially if we're losing large amounts of sweat, we don't need to have a typical sports drink that has a lot of sugar or has a lot of salt. So with that being said, let's talk about those typical sports drinks that I mentioned: Powerade, Gatorade. So Gatorade, Powerade are not on my list. Now you'll see Powerade Zero or Gatorade Zero. These also are not on my list because they still contain those artificial food colorings. And instead of sugar, they've got artificial sweeteners. Typically in everyday kind of sports drinks like that, you'll see sucralose, which is Splenda, and asulfame potassium. That's typically what's used to sweeten something like Coke Zero. So that is what's in Powerade Zero and Gatorade Zero. You'll also see G2 by Gatorade. Now, this is lower sugar, and so it's a blend of sugar and sucralose and asulfame potassium. Still has those artificial food dyes. So I'm not a fan of any of those. And when it comes to their electrolyte content, we can get this from other sources. So we don't need to drink sports drinks, specifically sugary sports drinks like Gatorade, Powerade, in order to get electrolytes. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of other options that we can do there. And they have either sugar, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, sucralose or asulfame potassium, and those artificial food dyes. So I don't love them, and you'll hear there's a lot others that I would recommend. Now, also in that entire Gatorade line, you'll see something called Bolt 24. I'm seeing this in, specialty store displays, kind of the end caps in stores. So I want to talk about it a bit. I like Bolt 24 as an alternative to all of their other Gatorade products because it is a more natural alternative. So it does still have sugar in it, which again, if you're exercising for that 60, 90 minutes or longer, we need that source of carbs. We need that source of sugar. It's an excellent source of electrolytes, sodium and potassium. And instead of being sweetened with just sugar, it's sweetened actually with a blend of sugar and stevia. And instead of having those artificial food dyes, it's colored with natural plant-based extracts. So Bolt 24 by Gatorade is sort of their natural answer, their plant-based answer to Gatorade's other sports drinks. So instead of Gatorade Zero, G2, or regular Gatorade, look for Bolt 24 by Gatorade. Again, that blend of sugar and stevia, natural plant-based colors, no artificial food dyes. And for an 8-ounce serving of it, it's just right around 10 grams of sugar, again, which we need when we are exercising for that extended period. One that I'll get questions about here and there is Mio Sport, M-I-O. It's the little drops, kind of the squeeze drops that you can put into your water bottle. There's Mio Energy, Mio Sport. It's also in the category that I wouldn't recommend because it's sweetened again with sucralose and asulfame potassium, and again, colored with those artificial food dyes. So the little squeeze bottle of Mio Sport, I would pass on that. I'm kind of working my way backwards, y'all. So Vitamin Water Zero. This is one that before I get into the ones that I really love, I'm going to talk about a few more. Vitamin Water Zero, I like it as a hydration source. It has zero sugar. It is sweetened with plant-based sweeteners. There's nothing artificial in it. It does have some vitamins and minerals, but it doesn't. So it's good for the everyday hydration. It's kind of it's very similar to drinking water, but it's lacking the sodium and potassium that's needed to be an effective electrolyte replacer before, during, or after exercise. So Vitamin Water Zero, great option for just everyday fluid source, but it doesn't have the sodium and potassium that we need for that electrolyte replacement. So if you're drinking it just in place of water, or you're drinking that as a more natural alternative to something like a Crystal Light, I love it. But don't count on that as your electrolyte-rich sports drink. I do get some questions about coconut water. It kind of had its moment a few years ago. I do still see people drinking it. It's not quite as much of a hot topic as it was a couple of years ago, but coconut water can be a really good natural sports drink. It is lower in sodium than you would think compared to traditional sports drinks. So if you are a really salty sweater, it might not be just quite enough. It does have, per 8 ounces, it's got about 10 grams of sugar. It's not added sugar. Now, this is naturally occurring sugar that's naturally occurring in that coconut water, but about 10 grams of sugar, almost 500 milligrams of potassium. So more potassium than you would get in a banana is in that 8 ounces of coconut water. Again, the sodium is lower. It does vary. It's a natural product. It's something that varies brand to brand, but you might be looking at about 35 to 75 milligrams per 8 ounces. So coconut water, a decent bit of sugar, but natural sugar, crazy high in potassium, which is a good thing, moderate sodium, which can also be a good thing, especially if you're looking for something to replenish electrolytes, yet you also need to keep your sodium in check. Let's take a quick minute to talk about Grove Collaborative, one of our sponsors for this week's episode. So natural plant-based cleaning products, they really do work, but where do you start and which brands do you trust? That's where Grove Collaborative comes in. They've curated this amazing selection of high quality, non-toxic, sustainably sourced items that we need. So Grove Collaborative is an online marketplace that takes the guesswork out of going green. You can browse their website for thousands of home, beauty, and personal care products, all guaranteed to be good, not only for you, but your family, your home, and the planet. I actually just ordered a couple of my favorite Myers Clean Day products. Love them. And I also got a pack of vinegar cleaning wipes and a healing balm and this all-natural first aid kit that I'll be using for our upcoming hiking trip. So with Grove, you don't have to search endlessly online to get all the natural goods that you need for you and your family. You can join over 2 million households who have trusted Grove Collaborative to make their homes happier and healthier. Plus, shipping is fast and free on your first order. Making the switch to natural products has never been easier. For a limited time, when you go to grove.co/fueled, you'll get to choose a free gift with your first order of $30 or more. But you've got to remember to use our special code. So go to grove.co/fueled to get your exclusive offer. That's grove.co/fueled. So these are sports drinks that have little or no sugar. So again, these are good for those workouts lasting less than 60 or 90 minutes. The sodium content, the electrolyte content of these vary. So I'll point out which ones are higher, which ones are just more moderate. My top pick, hands down, for what you would just consider a regular grab and go bottle of sports drink is Body Armor Light. So this is under the Coca-Cola line. It is something that you'll see in reaching coolers. If you see the Coca-Cola brand somewhere at a convenience store, grocery store, whatever, and you're seeing the Coca-Cola brand, look for Body Armor. There's Body Armor, but it has a decent bit of sugar. So it's Body Armor Light, and they spell it Lyte. This is hands down my top pick for that bottled grab and go sports drink that you can find in most mainstream grocery stores, places like Walmart. You will find Body Armor Light. So here's why I like it. So for a 16-ounce bottle of it, it's just 20 calories, 2 grams of sugar. Now, the sodium's a little bit on the lower end, 40 milligrams of sodium. Again, if someone is looking to keep their sodium in check, yet you still want a little bit as part of this fluid replacer, this is going to be a really fantastic option. The potassium, though, is crazy high in a good way. So I love it because no artificial sweeteners or colors. It's sweetened with stevia. It's colored with natural juice extracts, moderate sodium, really high in potassium, 2 grams of sugar, and just 20 calories for that 16-ounce bottle. Another one that I really like, now this is something that you might look at post-workout for that electrolyte replenishment, is Iconic. We've talked about Iconic on this podcast before. I've actually had the founder of Iconic, Billy Bosch, join us. And I love Iconic for a whole bunch of reasons, but it's 20 grams of protein for a bottle, which is about a 12-ounce bottle. The sodium, about 85 milligrams of sodium. It's also really high in potassium. Now, that protein in there can make it really good for a post-workout recovery shake. That also gives you electrolytes. If you're just using a protein powder, for example, protein powder mixed in water for post-workout, a lot of protein powders don't have the electrolytes we're looking for. So something like this in the ready-to-drink protein drink can. Now, it might feel a little weird to many people to drink something that's a milky, it's made with grass-fed milk protein isolate. It's sweetened with monk fruit and stevia. It might feel a little odd to drink this during your workout, but I have people who love it pre-workout and then also post-workout. And in both cases, it's giving you that hefty dose of protein, that good source of electrolytes. Iconic does also make a cafe au lait version that has 180 milligrams of caffeine in that 12-ounce bottle. That's about just shy of what you'd get in 2 cups of coffee. So that is a popular pre-workout drink, again, giving you that caffeine, that protein, and the electrolytes. So Iconic of any type, any variety, the chocolate, the vanilla, the other flavors they have are not caffeinated. So those can be, again, fantastic pre or post-workout. So Body Armor Light for that traditional sports drink, Iconic for that protein drink, that ready-to-drink protein drink that gives us that added bonus of protein with electrolytes, also with the fluid there that serves to hydrate us. Again, may feel a little odd during your workout, but it can be something that you look at doing pre or post-workout. Now, when you're looking at things that you can add to your water bottle, there's stick packs, there's powders, there's little tablets. There's several different ones that I really like, and Nuun is one. It's spelled Nuun. By the way, I'll link to all of these in our show notes as well. But Nuun Hydration is something I've been talking about for years. I love these little tablets. They remind me of like Alka-Seltzer tablets. They're in like a little plastic sleeve, and you'll have the little tablets in there that you just add into your water bottle. And each tablet, it varies a little bit depending on the specific variety of Nuun. And again, it's Nuun. But each tablet has about 10 calories, 4 grams of carb, only 1 gram of sugar. They're really a great source of electrolytes, 300 milligrams of sodium, which may be like, oh my God, I'm keeping my salt in check. 300 is a lot. It is, which is a really good thing. If you're exercising, you're losing a lot of sweat, and that salty sweat, that high sodium, high electrolyte replenishment can be fantastic. So I mentioned earlier, pay attention to if you feel like you're a salty sweater, if you cramp up a lot, if you have that grittiness on your skin, if you see that sweat drying on your clothes. If you're one of those salty sweaters, then something like Nuun can be fantastic for you, especially if you may not need that sugar. You're not going that distance, that 90 minutes or more, but boy, you're losing a lot of sweat and you're cramping up. And something like Nuun can be fantastic with about 300 milligrams of sodium, still a really good source of potassium, and only 1 gram of sugar. These little tablets, again, Nuun tablets that you put into your water bottle. I love them because, as all of these that I'm talking about that I love, no artificial sweeteners, no artificial colors. They are sweetened with stevia, colored with those vegetable juice extracts. Nuun also has what they call an endurance drink powder. So if you're like, okay, I love that it's really high sodium, the Nuun, but I need a little bit more carb because I am going longer. I am, playing in whatever match or tournament that's going to be extending several hours, or I'm training for an event. I'm going to be running or cycling for several hours. So the Nuun endurance drink powder, it's the scoops. It's by the scoop that you would put into a water bottle, and it's still high sodium, high potassium, all natural like we talked about, but it has a bit of sucrose added. So it has about 15 grams of sugar per scoop, which can be what you need, again, if you're going that distance, or that duration, I should say, of 60, 90 minutes or longer. So Nuun electrolyte drink tabs with just 1 gram of sugar, if you just are looking for the electrolytes, that Nuun endurance drink powder with high electrolytes, but also some sugar if you're looking for that duration, that longer extended training that you're doing. Let's take a minute to talk about Team 8 Fitness, one of our sponsors for this week's episode. Personal training is one of the top ways for people to get in shape and hit their fitness goals, of course. For many, though, there can be a lot of barriers to having your own personal trainer, especially when you're working around such a busy schedule. Team8 Fitness is here to solve those problems, providing you with your very own personal trainer through a virtual service that allows you to work out anywhere, wherever, and whenever it's most convenient for you. And as any good trainer does, your Team8 trainer listens to your goals and creates a custom workout to get you the results you want. Manage your workouts, talk with your trainer, and track all of your progress directly through your phone or computer. Take control of your fitness goals today with your virtual personal trainer. Get 50% off your first month when you use the code FUELED at checkout. Go to team8fitness.com to sign up. That's team, the number 8, fitness.com. Use promo code FUELED at checkout to get 50% off your first month. Team8 Fitness, online training made personal. Also in the same category of Noon is a product called SOS Hydration. I don't see this as much in stores. I've seen it in a few stores, but all of these I'll mention, you can find them in sometimes athletic type stores or natural grocers, places like Whole Foods. The supplement section of Whole Foods has a lot of these that we're talking about. So go by where you'll see it's in the whole body section by vitamins, minerals, and stuff. And they have a really incredible selection of these natural fluid replacers, especially when it's the stick packs and tablets that we're talking about adding to your water bottle. So we talked about Noon, the hydration tablets, and then also their drink powder. There's a product called SOS Hydration, similar, like we just talked about, to the Noon tablets. It's in a stick pack form, and it's got 350 milligrams of sodium, a hefty bit of potassium, but only 3 grams of sugar because it's also sweetened with stevia. So just a trace amount of sugar, 3 grams, sweetened with stevia. So SOS Hydration packs can be another alternative. High sodium, low sugar, similar to Noon. And if you like the stick packs or powder, like we're talking about with the Noon or the SOS Hydration, but you're looking for something lower sodium, you aren't training so much, or you're not losing these huge amounts of sweat, or you're not a really salty sweater, or there's a reason you really specifically are looking to keep your sodium intake in check. There's a brand called Ultima, 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 and they come in stick packs or a little tub of powder that you can add to your water bottle. And these have 0 calories, 0 sugar. Instead of 350 sodium, though, they only have about 55 milligrams of sodium. So this can be great to give us that bit of sodium, but not such a hefty dose like we get with Noon, like we get with the SOS Hydration. And then finally, I want to talk about pickle juice for a minute. So pickle juice gets a lot of press for its ability to stop a muscle cramp in its tracks. And it gets a lot of press for good reason. Now, a lot of times people think that pickle juice is effective in stopping muscle cramps because of the salt in pickle juice. And while it is high in electrolytes, specifically sodium, it is happening so quickly. It's instantaneous. You do a shot of pickle juice and within seconds, if it's going to work, it works within seconds. It's not enough time for the liquid of the pickle juice to enter our bodies, enter our systems, go through our GI tract, and then hit those muscles to alleviate the muscle cramping. So there's actually a separate compound in there that's responsible for that immediate relief of muscle cramps. And it is specifically the acetic acid in pickle juice. And the acetic acid, as we're swallowing the pickle juice, it's essentially, think of it this way, it's like hitting nerves that are in our throat that are actually sending immediate nerve impulses to those muscles that are all bunched up. They're all cramped up. They're what's causing that pain of that muscle cramp. The acetic acid hits these nerves in our throat that immediately sends a message instantaneously to those bundled up, bunched up nerves and causes them to relax, to uncramp, to relieve that pain. So it's the acetic acid, as we're actually in the process of swallowing it, that is immediately sending that nerve impulse to send the message to stop that muscle cramping. And side benefit, it is high in sodium. So pickle juice, you can drink the stuff that's in the jar in the fridge if you like, and that's what people have done for years. But of course, companies see this, they see what we're doing, and they try to help us fill a need. And you can now find pickle juice. The brand is called Pickle Juice. You can find pickle juice shots that are in stores. They sell it by the 8-ounce bottle. They also sell it in the little 2-ounce shots. I think the little 2-ounce shots are like very convenient. And that's just something you could keep in your workout bag. You may not need it all the time, but kind of keeping it there like in case of emergency, if you do have that extreme cramping and you're looking for something to immediately alleviate it. So this entire episode has been about specifically sports drinks. And we look at those sports drinks to give us electrolytes, like we talked about, and fluid replenishment. The other thing to realize is we don't need to turn to specific sports drinks to get these things. We can get electrolytes and we can get fluid from other sources. So it depends on where you are, what you're doing, what the circumstances are. But if you are looking especially at post-workout fluid and electrolyte replenishment, that's one where you don't need a sports drink. Now, here's what I mean by that. After a workout, if you're looking for that electrolyte replenishment, yes, you can turn to one of these sports drinks that we talked about, and that would be fantastic. But you can also turn to anything else that's going to give you fluid and electrolytes, namely sodium. So now cottage cheese, I know it's not like the crowd favorite, but cottage cheese is one that I love because it is high in sodium. It's also high in potassium. It's also high in calcium. So I love cottage cheese as that source of all three, especially sodium, all three of those electrolytes. So if you had cottage cheese with some fresh fruit and just pure water, you're going to get your carbs, you're going to get your electrolytes, and you're going to get your fluid. If you came back and you had like your favorite, let's just say your favorite blue chips or black bean chips with guacamole, you're getting sodium there, you're getting carbs there, you're getting electrolytes. And again, you had that with just pure water, then you're still going to get your hydration, your electrolytes, your carbs for replenishment. Obviously, these things that we're talking about are going to be post-workout. You're not going to be doing these during your workout. There's so many reasons that we would not be having cottage cheese or guacamole like mid-workout. But any of those things, it could be, some people, whatever your normal meals or snacks are, not always, but often, they're going to give us that source of electrolyte. They're going to give us that hydration. So things like cheese and fresh fruit. Cheese is naturally high in sodium. So a bit of good cheese with fresh fruit, or even something as simple as a turkey sandwich is going to give us the hefty dose of electrolytes. It's going to give you some carb, or a smoothie, a fruit smoothie. Now, if you're blending a smoothie, make sure that you've got something and you're looking at it for recovery, for replenishment, and specifically electrolyte replenishment. Make sure you've got something in it that's going to give you that sodium. So check whatever your liquid source is. Does this have any sodium in it? You could even put just a dash, like a pinch of salt or sea salt into that smoothie as you're mixing it. Because if you're using yogurt or just water or fresh fruit, you're getting a lot of potassium, but you're not really getting sodium. So check your liquid base. And if it doesn't have sodium, you could even do just even what you would feel like is the smallest pinch of salt, add a dash of that into that smoothie as you're blending it. So again, these food-based sources of electrolyte replenishment obviously are going to be things that we would just do during the course of our natural day, realizing that as we eat these foods, as we just eat our normal foods through the day, that is giving us what we refer to as electrolytes. As we're just drinking the things that we normally drink through the day and eat things like vegetables, fruits, etc., we're getting that hydration. We're getting those fluid sources. So we're getting fluid and electrolytes all throughout our day without even thinking about it. And after a workout, if you're specifically looking for something to replenish that salty sweat that you lost, we can do these sports drinks we've been talking about, but we can also do real food and just pure water as well. So I've talked about a lot of products in this episode. So I'm going to kind of do just kind of a quick run through. Traditional Gatorade, Powerade, G2, Gatorade Zero, Powerade Zero. I don't recommend them. There's so many other alternatives now. We don't need to drink these. Now, Bolt 24 by Gatorade is their natural answer to a sports drink. No artificial colors, no artificial sweeteners. It still does have the sugar that you may need if you're doing that 60, 90 minutes or longer. It's got a decent source of electrolytes. So if you're looking for a typical bottled sports drink, already made bottled sports drink, ready to grab and go, you want the electrolytes and you want some sugar in it, Bolt 24 is going to be a good solution that you can find in everyday mainstream grocery stores. If you want all of that we just said, but you don't want that sugar, that's where Body Armor Light comes in. Ready to drink sports drink. It's in bottled form. You're going to find it in regular mainstream supermarkets and stores. And it's got the electrolytes in it, but it's low in sugar for those times that you're not going 60, 90 minutes or longer. So for traditional grab-and-go sports drinks with electrolytes, you'll find them at your regular grocery store. Body Armor Light is your low-sugar version that I love. Bolt 24 by Gatorade is the higher sugar version that I still do really like as a sports drink option. Then when you're looking at what are the tablets and powders and stuff that you can add to your water bottles, the Noon Hydration Electrolyte Tabs and the SOS Hydration Stick Packs are both really high in electrolytes, really low in sugar. Noon also has their endurance powder, and they throw the word endurance in there because it's still really high in electrolytes, but they've added more sugar for those who are looking for that endurance. And then for those of you who are looking for that sports drink, but a little on the milder side, not so much sodium, and you also don't really want the sugar, then those Ultima stick packs that you can add to a water bottle are going to be your answer because they are lower in sodium. They still have zero sugar. They're all natural. And then if you have that extreme cramping, you're looking for that emergency relief, that's where something like pickle juice can come in. Again, reminder that I've got a really cool interview with Dr. Bob Murray on the science of muscle cramping, where we dive even deeper into why this happens, how this happens, and how all of these things that we're talking about help to relieve muscle cramping. And I will link to that in the show notes of this episode. I'll also link to the iconic protein drink interview that we talked about in the show notes of the episode. And all of these brands, I will be listing these out in the show notes as well. As you try some of these products, I want to hear about it. I always love hearing y'all's feedback. And if you have some favorite sports drinks that I didn't cover, let me know that as well. There's so many products out there. It continually evolves. There's also crowd favorites when it comes to taste, how they mix, everything. So I love hearing that from y'all. And as always, as you try some of these products, let me know what you think. And if you have favorites that I didn't cover, let me know that as well. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.